28. Unexpected turns. Serena was only trying to be funny when she saw Natalie's bruised and swollen face the next morning. "You're a sight for sore eyes," she said. Natalie didn't even try to smile as she readjusted the eye pack on her face. "Is it that bad?" "Yeah, it's pretty bad. It's a great thing It's a good thing I can't see you any better. But seriously, Nat, you were a real hero," Serena told her as they walked to breakfast. Eve was just behind them. "I think so too, Natalie. I would not have been able to do what you did." Murph was struggling to keep up with them. "Yeah, but aren't you going to get in trouble for leaving campus? Why'd you do that anyway?" Natalie ignored Murph's questions. She was sure there would be repercussions for leaving school, maybe even a suspension or an expulsion. In the dining room, Natalie slumped into a chair at their usual table, folded her cane, and set it beneath the seat. Unable to sleep the night before, she was tired and leaned against the hand that didn't hurt, still keeping the ice pack on her face. Mostly she worried about Bree. "What can I get you for breakfast?" Natalie asked. "I don't care. Anything," Natalie said. "Thanks." Serena returned with a bowl of cereal and a carton of milk and sat down beside Natalie. "I got some Cheerios. Here's a spoon," she said. Have you heard anything about Bree?" Natalie took the spoon and shook her head. "Nothing. All I know is they took her to Johns Hopkins Hospital. I'm going to ask Miss Audra if she'll take me to visit." Natalie reached into her pocket for the pink Hope Stone sheet. Pink stone, and hoped with all her heart that nothing serious was wrong with Bree. Then she sat up and tried the other pocket. Several times she felt both pockets because they were the same jeans she had worn yesterday. But the little stone was gone. There was no visit with Bree that afternoon. Natalie had to get on the bus and go home to face her parents, who were horrified over what had happened and distressed about her, and distressed about how narrowly Natalie had escaped serious harm. The whole weekend turned out to be an exhausting maelstrom of emotion, bouncing from sympathy for Natalie and Bree to gratitude that everyone was safe, to abject anger at the girls for walking alone at night. "What were you thinking?" her father demanded. "You could have been killed." I know. It was stupid. A totally stupid thing to do," Natalie agreed with him, over and over. "But Bree begged me to come and get her, and somehow I thought I could do it, Dad. But you know something? I did fight off that guy. If Mr. Lee hadn't taught us to do self-defense stuff in class, this whole thing might have turned out much differently." "Mr. Lee Fooey," her father exclaimed. Phooey to that whole school. I hate that city. This is why your mother and I live out in the country. All weekend, Natalie worried about Bree and was haunted by echoes of the incident. Even just brushing her teeth the first night she was home, she suddenly felt the man's arms around her neck again. And sent the toothbrush flying into the sink as her hands instinctively went to her neck. What did that guy want? Was he going to rob me? What if the man in the car hadn't stopped? What would have happened? I need to thank him. I don't even know who he is. How will I find him? Natalie wondered, too, if she would ever have the courage to walk alone again in public, just with a cane. She longed for the sympathetic ear of an old friend. She wondered if Meredith even knew what had happened. A promised call from Miss Audra didn't come until Sunday morning. Good news, she told Natalie. The 2 men who attacked you were caught. They're in jail. You may be asked to testify them by their voices. Identify them by their voices. Will Bree and I get kicked out of school, Miss Audra? I don't think so, Natalie. Don't worry about that now. How's Bree? When can I see her? Miss Audra's disturbing reply. Let's wait until you're back, okay? Early Monday morning, snow started falling in Baltimore. It was the first snow of the season in the eastern part of the state, and kids at school were excited. No one seemed to be dwelling on the incident from the previous week, and no one else seemed to be too concerned about the student that wasn't in class that morning. Instead, there was endless silly talk about how much snowfall was predicted and speculation over what was required to close school and send them home. Let's turn our pajamas inside out tonight, Murph suggested at lunch, instigating a round of laughter. I haven't done that since I was in 3rd grade. Natalie sat silently. In American government, Mr. Joe had a new assignment. On June 6th, 2008, he said, the Supreme Court struck down the District of Columbia's ban on gun possession and decided for the first time in our nation's history that the Second Amendment guarantees an individual's right to own a gun for self-defense. This decision, he went on, wiped away years of lower court decisions that held that intent of the amendment, ratified more than 200 years ago, just to tie the right of gun possession to militia service. How do you feel about this? Sheldon, go ahead. I don't think anybody should have a gun, he said. There's too much violence in this country, in this city. Baltimore has one of the highest homicide rates in the country, and Washington, D.C. is not much better. They need to keep guns off the street. I agree, Murph added. Guns are bad. My uncle got shot last year, and he wasn't doing anything, JJ jumped in to say. He was just standing outside on the street is all. Somebody drove by, and they just shot him. Hands, people. Remember to raise your hand, and let me call on you before speaking out, Mr. Joe reminded them. Serena, go ahead. I think the government should take away all the guns, she said, and then throw them in the ocean. All the guns? Okay. Does anybody here have a different opinion? Mr. Joe asked. Natalie, you didn't feel like participating? Any discussions that morning, nevertheless raised her hand. Natalie, go ahead. I just want to point out that farmers like my dad need guns to protect their animals and their land. We have a gun safe in my house with several rifles and shotguns in it. She heard a couple of gasps in the room. I fired a gun myself, she said, unashamed. I learned how to use a shotgun when I was 8 years old, but it was to understand. But you've got to understand that back where I live, hunting is a big deal. Wild turkey, deer, there's even a black bear season. Oh my gosh, Murph interrupted. Bears are so cute. How can anyone kill a cute little bear? Murph was behind her somewhere. Natalie turned around in her seat. My father would shoot a black bear in a heartbeat if it was coming after our goats.
Now, singing lessons today, 4 p.m.
She said. Just then the door to the classroom opened. And Mark, the student with tattoos up and down his arms, rolled his wheelchair out of the room, letting the door slam behind him. Mark, Mr. Joe hollered after him. Just a minute there, young man. You can't. Mr. Joe, Sheldon called out, stopping the teacher in mid-sentence. Sheldon lowered his voice. Mr. Joe, you're new. So, maybe you don't know, but Mark is in that chair because of a bullet. It went to his head. He's paralyzed and blinded in both. His own cousin did it. They were fooling around with somebody's gun. For a long moment, Mr. Joe remained silent. Natalie heard him pull out his chair and sit down. Thank you for explaining, he said quietly. He moved some papers on his desk while the class waited. Well, he finally said to the class, life's journey can be full of unexpected turns. I would like you all to reflect and examine your thoughts on this issue. 2 pages due on the first week of January after the holiday break. Decide which way you would have voted if you were one of the Supreme Court judges. In gym, the girl shot at a basketball hoop, equipped with a buzzer that sounded when the ball hit the rim. Mr. Lee was sick, so self-defense class had been canceled. Just as well, Natalie thought. They would probably be rehashing the incident from last week. Eager for news of Bree, Natalie rushed from gym to Miss Audra's office. "Hey there," Miss Audra said. She gave Natalie a small hug. "Your face looks better already. The swelling's really gone down." "Natalie?" "How's Bree?" Natalie asked. She put her backpack on the floor and felt for a chair to sit down, still holding her cane. "Can we go to the hospital?" She held Miss Audra close. She heard Miss Audra close the door. It seemed to take forever for her to return and sit down opposite Natalie. Why wasn't Miss Audra saying anything? Was she gearing up to tell Natalie that they were going to revoke her Forestville pass because of the trouble? Or was she about to break the news that they were suspending or expelling them both before school? Oh, from school. Instead, Miss Audra said in a calm voice and asked Natalie a weird question. "Do you know what an aneurysm is?" An aneurysm?" Natalie asked. "Yes. Some kind of a disease?" "Not exactly," Miss Audra replied. "An aneurysm is a weak or thin spot on a blood vessel that balloons out and fills with blood." Natalie frowned and sat up. Does this have something to do with Bree?" "Yes," Miss Audra confirmed. "It does." "She has one of those, Miss Audra? An aneurysm?" "Where?" "In her neck," Miss Audra said. "Is she going to be all right?" She heard Miss Audra sigh. "This is going to be so hard," she began, "because I know that Bree was your roommate and your friend." Natalie's cane fell to the floor as she gripped the armrest of the chair. "Miss Audra, wait!" But Miss Audra continued. "The aneurysm burst, Natalie. There were huge efforts to save her." Wait a minute, stop!" Natalie implored, even putting her hands up to her ears. But Miss Audra would not be stopped. Gently, she pulled Natalie's hands from her ears. "Bree has passed on," she said. "I'm so sorry, Natalie. There was nothing anyone could do."